Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed, and I'm your host for Freelance Canada, a show about what it's really like to freelance in Canada. Each week, I interview Canadian freelancers and industry experts as they get candid about the ever challenging, always exciting, and sometimes hilarious aspects of freelancing. On the show today, I'm going to talk to Anita Chauhan. Anita is a senior marketing leader whose experience spans more than 8 years in the Toronto tech community and 4 years in government agencies. Currently, she is the director of marketing at Crescendo as well as the head of marketing at Eirene Cremations. For the last 5 years, she's been the only marketer for several early stage startups while growing her own freelance business on the side. She's passionate about diversity and inclusion and is an advocate for women in tech. In this episode, Anita and I talk about how Canadian freelancers can work with their clients to determine the scope of work and set up each project for success. So let's get to it. So speaking of freelance, what do you do as a freelancer?
So I kind of run the gamut around like marketing stuff, but I have a background in PR. So I also not only do marketing, content writing, content marketing, plans, marketing automation, brand building. I also do a lot of press related stuff, media pitching. Like currently one of my clients, I just did a press release this week and we went live on the wire with it. And now I'm doing all the media pitching. So I kind of do it all. It's through my experience I've become some sort of a marketing PR generalist, and I've been able to use that and market that. And I also do website building and designing and wireframing.
So that's keeping you, I feel, quite well equipped. I don't even know if there is such a thing as a full stack marketer, but I think you would be up there for that role.
Yeah, I think so too.
You mentioned doing PR marketing. Is there any type of PR or marketing that you specialize in, or maybe a specific industry?
I've kind of been across several. I'd say I'm most adept at tech now, being in it for the last 6 years. Usually smaller startups, early stage startups. I usually come in and help build the marketing team if they can't hire someone full time, help with their content writing, their copywriting, their value propositions, kind of just creating all of that fun stuff so they have something to go off of. And I really love doing that, coming in and building from the ground up. It's exciting. I also have a lot of experience in government. Before I got into tech, I worked for a lobby group. And so that's exciting for me. I love doing stuff where I'm able to work with government stakeholders. And that's why I still love doing PR based things, because it kind of draws me back to that time that I was able to do comms.
And what were you lobbying for?
Oh, yeah. I worked at a lobby group. Well, one, I worked with an organization that taught children the parliamentary system in mock elections. So whenever we had a federal election or a municipal or provincial election, we would go across the country and work with teachers to provide them with resources to teach about civic literacy. And we lobbied with the government to make sure education got more funding around civic literacy. Then the other job I had after that was with the restaurant lobby group called Restaurants Canada, which was really, really fun because I was the first marketer and they had never really had anyone owning their digital space. So I got to eat at every restaurant in the city and then talk about it because I built the blog for them.
Sorry, so you had to eat at restaurants and blog about it?
Yeah. Sounds terrible, right?
Not at all. If anything, I think I'm trying to understand. So children learning parliament systems and eating at restaurants,
those are two separate different things. Separate. So the first one I worked at was called Student Vote, and we lobbied for education and civic literacy. That's one thing. And then I moved on to a restaurant lobby group called Restaurants Canada. And the goal is it's kind of like an association/union representing all small or even any business owner, not small, medium, but also large enterprise type restaurateurs. And so we'd lobby for their rights in the house. For example, one of the things that I was sad to be on the wrong side of history for was I was helping them in Alberta when Albertans wanted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. A lot of our restaurateurs, specifically the owners of big organizations or VPs of McDonald's or Boston Pizza, pay a lot of money in dues to Restaurants Canada and lobby groups like that. So unfortunately, I would be on the other side saying, to the government, we can't let you pass this tax because this will be harmful to restaurateurs. So like this is another payroll tax, and we do messaging to help lobby the government to avoid passing things like this in the House. And so actually one of the reasons I left.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you were on the side of the minimum wage should be higher or minimum wage should remain as is?
As is. So it's really crummy because I had to do messaging around how people didn't deserve a living wage. And this is opposite to what I personally believe. And I think that's the tough part, especially when you work in government. And it's just like, it was a great job and I had so many opportunities. But when my principles were called into question, I was just like, it's not worth it. And if I have to continue pandering to a group that I don't personally believe in, I just don't want to do the work for it. So I left and I went to tech.
And how did you make that transition to tech?
So yeah, I got my first role at Zoom AI. But the truth is I kind of dabbled in the space before. So I was always interested in that intersection of civic literacy and just like being a citizen in a digital age. I was very much into government 2.0, how we can use data and open data to better our system processes, to make cities more livable, to make this as an experience better. And I actually founded a meetup group in my mid-20s called Gov 2.0 YYZ. And we bring in people talking about different ways that you can use open data that's collected by different ministries in the government and build cool civic apps. So like things like Rocket Man, which is for TTC, or just like even like finding freshwater resources, stuff like that. So I was really interested in that intersection. So I also worked with DevTO, that big meetup group in Toronto for developers, and I was a community manager while I was working in politics and government. And then I was like, this is the place I want to be. So when I saw an opportunity open up at Zoom AI, I was like, hey, AI, productivity, we're going to change lives, love it. And I went for it.
And at what point did you start doing freelancing? Were you doing freelancing as you were always doing full-time, or is that something that you decided to dip into after your time at Zoom AI?
Actually throughout. So I kind of started before I got into government. I was doing my master's in PR and I had this little bit of time in between where I was like, I just want to travel. So I actually started building a business. I had about 5 to 10 revolving contracts, like at varying times. And I backpacked around the world and I lived a digital nomad life for about 8 months. So I lived in Bali for a little bit. I backpacked through Southeast Asia. I was just kind of going where I wanted. It was nice because I met a lot of people around the world who were doing the same thing. I think it was my first experience of like that remote work style that's now become so exciting and so new for people. And just this idea that we don't have to be chained to one location to work, and you can have the flexibility that you want.
And so when did you decide to start doing freelance on a more full-time basis?
So I think there've always been times where it's either I'm doing one or the other. So I'm full-time and I'm not doing freelance, or I'm doing freelance and not doing full-time, and or a mix of both. I think I've just my whole life loved having a lot of different things going on to keep my mind busy, and it's exciting for me. Right now, for this specific time, I'm full-time freelance because unfortunately my job was a casualty of COVID-19, my full-time job. So I took that as an opportunity to double down on the few contracts that I had cultivated in the last year. And I feel like it's 10x'd in the last little while. And because I've gone full throttle with it and I've taken all my learnings from the last 10 years of doing this off and on, I'm feeling better equipped.
And as you've started diving into full-time freelance work and taking on more and more clients from the sense of it, how have you been going about procurement of clients or getting clients?
Oh, yeah. So I'm frequenting a lot of those digital nomad boards for jobs, listings for marketing, things like that. A lot of it as well is referrals. And also, I'm part of this really great Slack group. It's for B2B marketers and content marketers. And I see a lot of opportunities pop up there. And because of that, I jump on it as fast as I can. And that is just, it's an initiative, I think. It's an initiative. And it's also taking opportunities when you see it. So I think I've been lucky as well that I have gotten the opportunities that have come my way. And when I put my name out there, I walk away with something really great. And I'm really thankful for that. A lot of great referrals too from people and connections I've made over the years.
So you meet with a client and the client's like, hey, do you want to work together? Like, how do you determine scope of work, given that if it's content marketing, the scope can be a little bit more identifiable in terms of like, here's the blogs I want, or maybe if it's, well, a lot of times people think PR is just like, hey, you do a press release and that's it. But there's a lot of relationship building. There's a lot of follow-ups that's also involved. So it's not as packaged as clearly as people think it is. So how do you go about structuring your project to ensure that the client is happy and you're happy at the end of it?
I think this is one of those things that is a constant work in progress for me too. I don't have like a clear-cut answer. There are systems I've put in place that have made it better than they used to be. And one of those things is like having like a scope of work or a creative brief beforehand. And I think that with all the relevant questions to get the understanding of what they need, plus my own development like process of how to actually go around doing the work, like saying things like, if it's a blog, we have 2 reviews for this. If it's a website, you have 2 reviews. And then from there, that's it. I also work really hard to educate through the process. And one of the things that has become the most important thing is in specifically not only website design, but also with any PR or media pitching things that I'm doing, is to show how post working with me, if we're no longer working together, is how they can do it themselves. So I put together some documents, I put together some best practices, things like that to equip them with. So for example, the current client I'm working with that I mentioned, I'm doing a press release and like media pitching currently with them. There's things that might trickle through from the media pitch, not this week, not next week, but maybe even end of August. And I might not be working with them at that point. The scope of my work finishes at that point and I move on to my next clients. So what I do then is I give them best practices on how to talk to these media representatives, reporters, journalists, and how to actually go about giving them what they need. So that could be things like part of the scope. I've said, okay, I'll help you with your media kit. So when you actually have a reach out when I'm not there, you can just easily send that to them, or just making sure that they know that they have to have the assets in order, and even messaging just to respond in the best way.
Is that all scoped into your project discussions or the overall project plan? Or how does this come up? Because it seems that you are not only delivering on a specific amount of end results, but at the same time, you're also equipping your clients to then be able to continue the work should things not work out.
Yeah, definitely. So it is, and it is built into the fee. It depends also on what they're looking for. So at the very beginning, with that creative brief or that scope of work, I walk through with them exactly what they're looking for and what they'd like. And so it usually starts with a conversation now over Zoom or Google Hangouts. And I just kind of get an idea. It's kind of like a fact-finding conversation where I try to understand what their goals are and what those end results are, right? So if it's an end result of we want to continue to push this message, if it's a press release, or we will need to build this website or this landing page and update it constantly, I'll build that into the price to teach them how to use the back end or how to respond to media. So it's all part of it. And as I've done the work beforehand on my best practices guides and, just the messaging and how to go about it, it's something that I feel is reliable and it's a process that I feel secure in that I'm happy to share with them.
Right. And so to learn how Canadian freelancers can set their project up for success. And for that, what have been your go-to tactics or resources or even part of your process to ensure that so far?
So I think it's a nebulous question in the sense of like there's so many things you can do. But speaking from my experience, I think the number one thing you can do is to be proactive. And not only is freelancing project management, but it's really good customer service at the same time. So you kind of have to be okay with handholding and managing. And there's a myriad of things that can go wrong. And if you're okay with the fact that things can go wrong and are adaptable, then I think that you're well poised to be a freelancer. And I think being very sure of the scope of a project, setting up checkpoints on when to talk to your clients and keep them updated, those are really good tips to make sure that things can go well and you're set up to maybe even do recurring projects with these people. I've even gone as far as building Kanban and project management boards with my clients. I use tools like Notion and Asana or even Monday.com to make sure they're all on the same page. I set up weekly checkpoints. I kind of over communicate just so I know that I've done my utmost to make sure that clients getting what they need, but also that they get that exceptional customer experience with me.
And at least in your experience so far, what has gone wrong for you that you have proactively now started putting appropriate measures in place?
Yeah. So I guess just like with that mindset of being proactive after years of recognizing that, it can go off the rails at any point. And I think some of the pain points I've seen come up most frequently for me is like just a general poor organization. That's why I opt for really good workflows, setting up Kanban boards and deliverables on that and checkpoints. Also from the get-go, getting the assets or creating a flow of information sharing with your clients really important, because if your client isn't organized, that can actually jeopardize your experience with the project. So making sure that from the get-go, you know what you need, working with them to make sure that you're able to share the stuff that you need on a quick basis. And if they're not organized, they'll waste your valuable time and you'll waste theirs. And you might even miss deadlines and things like that. So to curb that, I make sure, like I said, I over communicate. I have a set of tools. I have templates that I use. And it also helps me stay on top of things. So they know that they're getting a really good experience with me and they can leave the work that they need done in my hands and I can go and run with it to success.
And when you said making sure that your client is organized, what do you mean by that? Could you dive into that a little bit, please?
I think like making sure that they know what they want from the onset. So like I said, like having a scope of work, having that intro conversation with them is so important. Making sure that you even know before going in what you exactly need from them. And for me, this was like a test of time. I started to learn what somebody in that role, specifically in a startup that is starting off their marketing endeavors from scratch, maybe doesn't really have a unique value proposition yet. The copywriting is not there. The voice and tone isn't there. So because I've been in that role, I have that experience, thankfully, where I can go in now when I'm talking to these clients and say, okay, so this is what I've needed in the past. I'm going to ask you the exact same questions, and then that'll be the base board that we'll start off on. If they also don't have the tools and things to keep themselves organized, I suggest that we do something together. For example, if I'm writing a blog and I need quotes from them, or if I'm writing a press release and need quotes from them, I don't want to have to wait and maybe even miss my deadline. So just like giving them not only my tools and working with them on their time, but also doing it so that we both reach that success, keeping them organized and keeping them honest.
And what has been the feedback from your clients when you've come in with almost at least it seems to me, a fairly fine-tuned process?
Really positive. I think a lot of them don't have the time to think about this. And I think when I am selling myself or pitching to them, it's not only the fact that I have the experience in the writing, the experience in actually working in a small startup. It's the fact that I know how to operationalize the marketing flow, that they can trust it and they feel safer than relinquishing that control. I often find that because of that, it reduces the amount of micromanaging that happens. Because I'm also over communicating and I've given them tools like a Kanban board, for example, to go and look at where I fill everything out with deliverables and timing and due dates. I think that they feel safer. And that's the biggest thing for me. I want them to have trust and confidence in me when I'm working with their brand, especially if it's something that they've done from scratch themselves. It's like their babies. So I understand that having worked with CEOs, I understand the amount that goes into it. And I want them to feel comfortable. And I just want to do the utmost best work to help them articulate things that they're building. But sometimes to get there, you need them to feel, just in general, people need to feel safe and secure giving that to someone else. And marketing's huge. Marketing and messaging is massive. So these tools give that security. And I really recommend it to people. And having that development and your own like plan set out on how you work is huge.
And with any client, there can be times when there is an issue. What has been your experience in there being an issue, and how did you go about raising it with the client and mitigate that together?
I think being open, honest, and transparent is the best way to raise any potential issue, not only with clients, but in life, forthright. I know it's scary, but if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And, in the past, I've had to swallow that lump in my throat and just kind of go for it and, stand up for myself and demand, for example, more money if it goes beyond the scope of work, or saying, hey, you know what? I dropped the ball on this. Or, you know what? You didn't provide this to me. I think remembering when it comes to bringing up issues or having to have those hard conversations with a client, remember that you have an equal voice and say in the matter. And it helps empower you. And, remember, as a freelancer, you have the choice not to work with that client again. If things kind of go off the rails, you can say, you know what, this isn't working for me. And you have that freedom to move forward with something else or move on. So sometimes unforeseeable issues can come up, and that's just life, right? That whole 80-20 rule. I recommend keeping a cool head and approaching your client where you feel the most comfortable. I usually set up checkpoints, like I said, like weekly. Make sure that those are set from the onset, because even if it is something just like an update, it's a time where I have with them their undivided attention. I don't have to ask for their time to bring up that problem. It's already set in the calendar. So even things like a post-mortem where you can say, hey, I liked working with you, but this happened, and I think that we failed here, or being critical and honest, giving that feedback post-project, if you want to move forward with them and work with them on a recurring basis, is really helpful as well. So I think checkpoints and just taking that courage and saying it, because you do have an equal voice in this relationship. And maybe if someone has transitioned from a full-time job and are doing freelance for the first time and they don't really know how to do that client management, it can be tough. But I think remember that it's an equal partnership and you have a say in how you work with somebody.
You mentioned scope creep. And I feel like almost every project has that. What has been your experience in addressing scope creep, and how have you ensured that there is a smooth transition or mutual resolution, at least when there is scope creep?
I really am bullish when it comes to the parameters of the set out scope. So from the contract that I signed and send at the very beginning, I have everything itemized regarding scope. So if it goes beyond what is said there, I raise a flag to the client and I say, just so you know, in the original contract, it was stated X, Y, and Z. We have kind of gone beyond that. I think that we have to kind of talk about or readdress the work that was spent. Or, for example, a recent client had a set of PDFs that he wanted me to create in an ebook style for usage on LinkedIn. And he said, I want to do 8 with you. At the end of it, he realized it wasn't performing as well that he thought it would. The engagement wasn't there, that he's like, we're just going to cut it off at 4. And I had given him a volume discount for the amount that I was doing. So the scope of work changed, and it was a tough conversation. I'm not going to lie when I say that I had to be really courageous in writing an email saying, hey, we have to review this. And it's still tough for me after all these years. Just simply sending an email to ask for more money or ask what I'm due is still tough, but people are amenable to it more now than ever. And I think people want to pay for good work. And this person was really reasonable and opened up a conversation with me about what I felt my work was worth. And they agreed. And it just took that step of saying something. But it's hard. It's hard because sometimes when it comes to writing, when it comes to press releases and media pitching, things will go beyond what you set out. But also, if they aren't amenable to having a conversation with you about going beyond the scope of work, then I think that it's really worth reviewing contract details with them and sitting them down, and also thinking twice about working with them in the future.
Oof, I can't imagine how scary and awkward and weird all at the same time would be to be like, hey, I'm fine with the 4 articles, but I have to charge you more because I give you a volume discount.
Yeah. And this should be just based off of your time and what you're worth. And you're providing something really great for these people and these brands. But sometimes that's not how everyone sees things. And that brings me back to what I said earlier. Like, it's an equal partnership. And you have to empower yourself through this whole process to remember that you're not in this supplicant role here. And the more you remember that, the more ownership you take in any client interaction and managing those workflows and the scope of work will mean better success for you in the long run.
I think it'll be helpful to kind of get a high level walkthrough of what your typical process is. So, for example, what I mean by that is client reaches out and they have a project in mind, and you're like, okay, this sounds interesting. Could you walk me through like what happens next leading up to like you making sure that the project is set up and ready to go?
For example, let's say I go the route of someone has posted online that they're looking for a copywriter. I will reach out immediately, and immediately from the outside say, hey, here is who I am. Here's a little blurb about me, my experience, what I work on. I've done value prop for tech companies before, if that's what they're looking for. I also send a link to my portfolio, just so they don't have to ask for it. And I give them all the information up front and say, let's have a conversation about this. And if they're interested, they reach back out to me. They say, okay, yeah, let's jump on a call. It usually follows that after that, let's book a call, let's meet to see how, let's see if we jive. And I take that opportunity to give them a little background on the work I've done, the freelancing I've done, the full-time work I've done, which will fully impact the work that I do, and just talk about how I work and the process I go through. So I also take that time to figure out if they'd worked with freelancers in the past, if they have been in a situation where they had to manage someone that wasn't in their company, and just understanding what success looks like to them. Because I never want to sign up for anything that I know I'll fail at. Because if I feel that the clients' expectations are above and beyond what I can provide, I'm going to be real with myself and them and save us both the struggle and potentially bad interaction that could come from something not working out. The truth is about writing, as a lot of the work that I'm doing is writing. The truth is that it is so subjective. Like, someone's view of how something should be worded can be so different from another's. And I think it's really important to see how, like, I really do ask the potential client if they've looked over my portfolio while I'm talking to them, so they understand how I write and they understand the flow that I build, because I don't want them to think that I'm just going to adhere to something in their mind that I have no idea about.
I'm digesting.
Yeah. And then I guess I can keep going from there. If it's all signs go and things feel right, I send them over a creative brief. And I actually send that before I send the contract, because I want to also get an idea if this is still feasible. And then once I get an idea of what they're looking for, I itemize the things that they have articulated to me. I give a time frame. I put the agreed upon amount. I usually follow up with the amount after our first conversation and after the creative brief has been outlined, because I do it off of my time. Like, pricing is a whole other thing. And that's also something that I'm still learning after 10 years. And I'm doing it more project-based now. And before, I used to do hourly, but I like to take the time away and not just give a number immediately. So usually the first interaction, I avoid saying or giving a number. I follow up after I see the scope of work. I send that in a contract, mutually sign it, mutually agree upon it, and then we go from there. And then I set up some tools and set out the main deliverables on a Kanban board, and we go from there.
And what has been your driving factor to transitioning from hourly rate to project-based rate?
Just because in my head, my time is worth more than the hourly rate shows, if that makes sense. I think that I can itemize it in this way by hourly, but it actually takes more time than that. It takes up more mind share. And I do it by days now. I look at more like, okay, it's going to take me 3 days to complete this versus like 3 hours. And I think that everyone's hourly perception is different from one person to the next. And as a creative and as a person who needs to kind of get in the flow of writing and do certain things that will help stimulate that type of creative process for me, I actually think this works better because it gives me the space to work within the day. And I was severely underestimating before the time that it would take me to write. And if I want a good product, it's not only just like, oh, I'm worth X amount of money versus the other amount. It's more just like, if I want to give a good product to you, if you want something that's going to stand out, I'm actually going to take a couple days versus 4 hours to write something. If you just want a standard SEO blog, that's easy. If you want keyword stuffing, I can do that in a couple hours. But if you want something that's going to stand out and actually get you reach, I need time with that.
I like that. So given that it is Leo season, what has been your insights into horoscope and what's in the stars for the Leos out there?
Well, I mean, not just for Leos. Leo season's great. Leo season's great because we just left Cancer season, and Cancer season is like, you're all in your feelings. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling all the things. And we just literally finished a bunch of eclipses, which are super emotionally and mentally draining for many. And when you enter Leo season, it's actually a masculine sign. So it is about action, energies, and it's go, go, go. So you might feel a shift in how your energy is being spent. For Leos in general, they're going to shine. It's just a really exciting time because they feel empowered. But everyone has an opportunity to take that energy because it's actually ruled by the sun. The sign of Leo is ruled by the sun. So it's this idea of like, you're imbued with this childlike exuberance to go and get and to do. And it's an opportunity to really listen to what your soul is telling you that you want to do. Leo is all about authenticity and individuality. And if there's something that you've been wanting to pursue, something that you want to go ahead and get done that's like you think is a core part of your identity and you've just never been able to make it happen, now is the time.
Love it. Do you have like a certain method of reading, or like what has been your process for learning? And I don't know if predicting is the right word, or projecting, or like what are you doing? It's not predicting, right? It's more so like foreshadowing in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I wouldn't use the word predicting. I think that it's kind of there, and it's just like, I don't believe in this idea of necessarily predestiny. It's more just like, this is what's happening right now, and this is how it could impact you. And I had said at the very beginning that it is an opportunity for introspection, and I take that really seriously. I think if you weigh it out against other, like there's lots of stuff that says astrology isn't real, all of this stuff. But if there's any opportunity for you to learn about yourself and say, okay, hey, I myself, I'm a Leo, and I go online and I read all the stuff about Leos, and it's like, hey, you know what? Like 90% of that was true. The other stuff, maybe not so much, or like actually none of that's true. There's like this opportunity to learn more and say, okay, well, they say that you could be like this. And it's like, dig deeper. Like, why is 90% of it true? And where's the 10% that's missing? And then that's actually how I started, where I started looking at things online and saying, I'm a Leo. I'm X, Y, and Z, but also I don't agree with this one. And then I was realizing there's actually more than your sun sign. And I was like, how do I figure that out? And then I looked at more, and there's more going on. And then I started doing birth charts for people in my life. And that just takes into account like location, birth date, and time of birth. And I was able to see that there's so many variances and things that you have to account for. And just like we know humans are multifaceted and contain multitudes, and it's not just about your sun sign when it comes to astrology. There's things like your moon sign and your ascendant. And yeah, so what I started doing was building birth charts for people in my life. And I actually have an Etsy store where I sell custom made birth chart books, where it's like a deep dive into the person's main aspects and planets. And it's like a photo book that's designed for that person. So I do like baby books for someone, a newborn, and just saying like, this is how they could be with these astrological influences.
That's so cute.
Yeah, it's a very personalized gift. It's very nice. So what sign are you?
I'm a Pisces. Don't know what that means.
Interesting.
Oh, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just like really, really empathetic. It is the last sign of the zodiac. So it actually takes on some of the best and worst traits of the ones that precede it. I think obviously a lot of these are generalizations, but very creative and sometimes musically inclined. Of like tons of famous musicians are Pisces or have a Pisces moon. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot. There's other stuff that's probably in your chart that I'd be happy to show you. But Pisces are great. I actually know many that are very creative and finding new creative ways in whatever chosen field they're in to get to where they want to get to.
Got it. Cool. I mean, hopefully Benji is viewed as a creative company. So fingers crossed on that part. So as we wrap up, I'd love to know where people can find out more about you and your work online.
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Anita_Chauhan, or you can visit my website, www.anitachauhan.ca. And yeah, shoot me a message. Find me on LinkedIn. I always want to connect. I love meeting new people. And if you want to talk about new projects, if you want to talk about, just what I've learned in my experience, I'm here and I'm always open to sharing information, because I think that's the best way how to navigate this crazy changing world.
Well, thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's our show for today. If you liked Freelance Canada, then be sure to subscribe to our newsletter by visiting freelancecanada.fm. You'll get access to all of my personal notes, as well as book recommendations about the topics discussed in the episode. Now, you will not find any of this on our website, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. As with most podcasts, you can listen to every episode through Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It would mean a lot if you could leave us a 5-star review. It would mean even more if you shared our podcast with another freelancer so it can help them in their journey too. Finally, if you're tired of leaving money on the table because you don't know which of your expenses you can write off, then sign up for Benji. You can start your 90-day free trial by visiting betterwithbenji.com, because freelance life is better with Benji. Thanks for listening.